Welcome to Executive Exchange Radio with moderator Joe Cristiano, America's corporate exorcist. Hosted by Dr. Jennifer Beaman and Jorge Gutierrez, trusted advisors to chief executives and business leaders across the nation. If you would like to add to the conversation, call 646-652-4620.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Executive Exchange Radio with Dr. Jennifer Beaman and Jorge Gutierrez of the Business Management and Operations Consulting Group. Today we will be discussing sustainable growth starts with leadership. That seems obvious, but maybe not so obvious to many of us because we typically don't think in that fashion. And sometimes structurally, if we put our minds together and we put all these concepts in the right place, we can utilize them better when we're interacting with employees or anyone else. So it's helpful for everyone. During our live broadcast, if you'd like, you can call our number, 646-652-4620, with your questions or comments. George, welcome back to our studio.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure.
There you go. Okay, now we have everyone on the air. And Dr. Jennifer, thank you very much for being with us today.
And thank you for having me. I'm happy to see you again.
Thank you so much. You're the first person that said that in the past 8 years. So I feel kind of good about it. Well, we talk about the sustainable growth in businesses, and of course, no one goes into business with the thought of, well, I'll do this for a week or two and then I'll quit and I'll lose all my money. A sustainable business is always desirable because even if you like the business, if it's sustainable, you can sell it and make a heck of a lot of money. So, but that's a terminology that sounds good, but is not as easy to implement as we think. When we say that it's sustainable, we need some sort of competency model within the organization. And in that competency models, we have to understand what the skills of the people are, what those hard skills are, and what the soft skills are. So you want to start with some of the hard skills and how you determine whether or not the person has the ability to sustain themselves with the growth of the company. Either one of you speak up.
Exactly.
I think definitely. I'm going to let Dr.
Go ahead. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, so there's a couple of buzzwords in there. The buzzword sustainable itself evokes a whole lot of different definitions. But for today's purpose, we're going to look at sustainable growth, through the process of leadership, or the skill of leadership, if you would. So you also use the word competency, and what we continue to discover is that in many organizations we're still using the old competency model of leadership, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The problem that we see is using the competency model just hopes for results, and what happens is, when we get under stress, or when we're in the process of looking for either promoting somebody to higher levels of responsibility or bringing talent from the outside, what we look for is their attributes. What are the individual traits that they have in terms of competencies that are properly aligned with the organizations. And those things could be things such as integrity, honesty, all the great things that we look for leaders to have and emulate in the workplace. So that's kind of the old school of looking at it. But what many of the executives think is that if the leaders that they either promote or retain have those competencies, then they can achieve results. And sort of hope that because they bring that sort of character with them, or that they can actually apply it to the workplace. And that could be true, but we're looking at fail-safe leadership, and the fail-safe leadership model looks at aligning organizational goals up front. So not only do we want leaders to have those competencies, but we also want to set them up for success and outline early in the process in terms of what the organizational goals are. We want to articulate to them and with them what they are to make sure that we have the proper buy-in for those leaders. And doing that really kind of sets them up for success in order to attain your results, which is what that sustainable growth in leadership kind of looks at. It's not just about having all these competencies, but it's the ability to attain results and make money, while we're in the employment place.
Dr. Beaman, would you like to add to that?
No, I agree completely. I think that, George, you've said that extremely well. It's a continuous development process, and all of our traditional models are obviously, the philosophy is what we build upon. But in addition, what I think is so neat is by paying attention to attributes and values and soft skills, we are creating a more holistic approach to, the worker or the executive, for instance, the leader, whoever we're talking about when it comes to human capital. When we're incorporating both, we're going to get more. We're going to see the hard skills being used a lot more effectively because we are also taking into account soft skills.
Now,
from both,
when
all accounts.
When you say hard skills, to me, hard skills are, for example, a person's education, possibly the types of jobs that they've had before, stuff that items that can be quantifiable and documented. Am I missing any any categories other than job skills and experience? Are those the main ones, or are there more than that?
That usually hits it. That's like it's oftentimes what we like. If we see on a job description, they need engineering experience, or say if it's in a construction field, they want certain years of welding experience or certifications in mechanics, whatever the skill level is in that trade, for instance. So those would be considered hard skills. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
So
I'm going to tell you a horrible story. Please don't cry on my account. I invested in a small company. I was the major investor. The one person was very competent. He had all the hard skills and the soft skills. But the person that was actually doing the work, he was going to manage the company. The person who was going to head up the actual operations were top of the line hard skills. This guy was mentioned in magazines and everything. His soft skills were zero. Absolute zero. I lost every penny. I didn't recover 1 cent from that investment. So here we had a case of all the hard skills were there. You say, wow, this is going to be great. We're going to fly with this guy. This is going to be great. But all of his soft skills were gone. I won't go through the whole thing because I don't want you to cry on my account. It was that bad, and it was horrible. Many nights without sleep because I was so angry with myself that I did not look at the soft skills and give it enough, or when I did, I didn't give it enough weight. Now, I assume that soft skills are stuff like character, mentality, behavior. Could you help me define that better, please?
Well, let me jump in quickly because we are throwing some pretty broad terms around. So we look at skills and knowledge, and we put those two together. Okay, so an example would be a quality engineer that has been working, in the automotive industry, in the manufacturing department, and has all the skills and knowledge for that industry in terms of being a quality engineer / a process engineer. So that builds a great resume, okay? And then has a change of career and changes from being in the automotive industry and goes into a different manufacturing industry. But the resume reads really well because this professional brings skills and knowledge within the quality realm, okay? So we hire that person, and then quickly we begin to see that that person is failing, and we can't figure out why. Well, these are the type of skills that some people like to consider soft, such as leadership and management. These are skills that are also learned. So then it's time to either make a determination, you know, whether you remove the person or you make an investment. And we talked about you used the word investment. So the person that makes the biggest investment is the one, you know, that is at risk of losing the most money. So that becomes now an emotional and a significant event, you know, if this person can't run your operation. So the whole growth and sustainability part requires an investment on leadership development. So if we can identify that this person is probably a good fit because it's got the right hard skills, the technical skills, the engineering skills, if you would, if they have a good attitude and we catch it up front, then it's worth, you know, making the investment on the leadership development side of things, so they get taught the leadership and management skills that are required for them to adapt to a new work environment. I think that makes sense, and you know, I don't want to share hard stories, but we do have a current situation that the chief executive has decided, you know, under a lot of consultation, that he's going to retain this person because this person is worth saving. But think about this. This person is making six figures, been in the organization for about 8 months already. And that particular department is failing because they're not meeting the requirements that the customer wants. So the question then becomes, well, how long do I have to continue to feel this pain, you know, before this person actually begins to produce some of the results that we want? That's why it's imperative for organizations to really kind of think through their budgetary needs and determine how much they're willing to the line item on their budgets that would go towards training and professional development. Yeah. It can save a lot of money in the long run because they're really making an investment in their people that will pay off in the future.
Yeah. You know, in my early years, which was a long time ago, by the way, folks, you know, I would have forced ranked, if I had, you know, skills. I would have forced ranked the hard skills, you know, first. I would have whittled them down. If I had to write them down, and the soft skills would be on the bottom. You know, it's funny today. Today I would do the exact opposite. I would take in the soft skills before I would want to know. I want to know a lot about a person's soft skills, if you will. You know, their behavior, My father used to talk about mentality. He passed away many years ago, was in business for himself, and he used to tell me all the time, it's mentality. I said, hey, Daddy, what do you know? You know, I went to have a college education. I know more than you, you know, that type of thing. You know, the wise guy's son that I obviously was. But my father was absolutely correct. You know, it has nothing to do with what you know, but the way you acquire and use knowledge, and that's a soft skill. And it has all to do with my father's favorite word that I used to hear every day of my life, and he was absolutely right. It has all to do with mentality, and I think we give that second place. What's your opinion?
Yes, I agree. I wanted to chime in. I think that, you know, when an individual possesses the general cognitive and technical skills that we need for him or her to perform the job, if they're trainable and they've got the right attitude, then we can mold them into what we need for our company, what our company needs, just like in further support of what you both were saying.
Yeah.
You know, if they could be the most brilliant individual in the world, and if they've got the wrong attitude or they're not open to training, they're not going to do our company much good. You know,
right.
If they might be great, but if they cannot convey that, all that brilliance isn't going to do our company any good. And what we want individuals that we can mold into what our company needs, and that is acquired through largely through soft skills, and being available, and that's through attitude. And we achieve that, and we discover that.
Absolutely correct.
For instance, through the assessments that we use. We can just determine whether or not they align with what we need, if their disposition, their skills, their inherent values, what motivates them, their behavior, their communication skills, all that stuff. If it aligns with what we need, then they're in a better position to succeed. On the flip side, then just like the example used before, if sometimes it's, we have that decision whether or not it's better to cut the ties, because it can be expensive to keep an underperforming direct report or executive. But when we've determined that they are valuable, like the gentleman that or the client that George was making reference to, that we can definitely help them, certainly. And those are the ones we want to help.
Yeah.
Because we know they're valuable, and we can find that, and then for instance, through the assessments, figure out the best way to reach them, connect with them, and then bring them up to speed.
Yeah, what's interesting is I read an interesting statistic not too long ago that over 1/2 of the billionaires, with a B, not an M, billionaires in this world. I'm not one of them yet. I'm almost there, but but more than half of the billionaires never went to college. And a good portion, they didn't give the number, a good portion never finished high school. And so much of it, if you look into their backgrounds, had to do with whether or not they were enabled as a child or they had to figure out things for themselves.